In a world that's highly judgmental at the moment, where does someone begin to try and stay in a good mind frame?
You've just said it there, it's the mind frame. They're getting consumed by everything they see on social media, and that becomes their identity rather than their own internal beliefs.
There are a lot of people now purely looking for the dopamine hit of viral views. I don't think a lot of people even know their values anymore.
They don't.
People are fully grown adults and they're acting like children.
You say children, I say narcissists.
I will scroll on TikTok lives. 70% are women sitting there with cleavage, lingerie, not even engaging with followers other than, guys, double tap the screen, thanks for the gifts. They're losing themselves. They're living in a false reality. And when they hit that off button, not everyone's telling me I'm beautiful all the time.
You can't connect with someone when you're behaving in ways that's creating toxic environment. Then what happens? You damage people. All women are scum, all men are assholes.
It's becoming worse, increasingly fast, and it's becoming the norm. It's nuts. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Now, before we begin, very excited because I'm here at a new studio, sound and vision. All the links are going to be in the description. It's awesome. I have an awesome guest who's first timer, now second timer, Rebecca P. Fox. So we're going to be talking, let me give you some context. Firstly, Rebecca P. Fox has an awesome book, and there's going to be more details. Links will be in the description. And we're going to be talking about the toxic world that we live in and how to overcome it and loads of other things. So stick around. But new studio, really excited. New partnership and sponsorship with Sound and Vision. Now, without further ado, second time round on the Knightley's Roundtable podcast. And actually, really funny, I have to say this. Was it what did you call the Knightley's Round Table that time? I can't remember. Knights Around the Table.
It was indeed, yes.
Love it, love it. We might have to change it. But welcome back, Rebecca. Excited to have you here.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Pleasure. So we are going to dive into the world that we're living in now. We touched on it last time and a load of other subjects. So if you're sticking around, how to overcome a lot of, I suppose it's like insecurities, things that happen in the world, the fast pace of it all, comparison, judgment, and a lot more, and how to stay, I suppose, mentally sane, which ties nicely into your book. So, in a world that's highly judgmental at the moment, where does someone begin to try and stay in a good mind frame?
Well, I think that you've just said it there. It's the mind frame. You know, there's so many of us that are living with fixed mindsets as opposed to growth mindsets. And that's where they're becoming stuck. So they're getting consumed by everything they see on social media. They consume the news. And that becomes their identity, and they have this belief around what's shown to them rather than their own internal beliefs, and actually connecting with who they are as a person and being open. You know, like that growth mindset is about being expansive, being curious. That seems to have been shut down now because it's this opinion or that opinion and nothing else matters. Yeah. So I think that's where everything's being driven now. Everyone's got that mentality that what they see online is true. And most of the stuff isn't true. So they follow that narrative.
Yeah. So there's three things we're going to pick apart, which I spoke about on a live this morning. I know we've spoken about it. So Instagram, the perfect picture, looks great. So we're going to address that. The very strange world. I mean, we love TikTok, but I think it's becoming incredibly damaging for influential people who are quite naive maybe to really the damage that it's doing with TikTok lives. It's becoming a bit of a hot topic, so we're going to talk about that. But also, as we were just saying there, is news, like consuming news. I've done a video on this recently, and it is more damaging than you realise, on your mental well-being, paranoia, trust issues, believing the world is doom and gloom. But if you're, they say ignorance is bliss, and I think that's a better way to live life when it comes to the news. So let's address the news. What's your views on people who are still waking up, buying papers, opening up the news app, watching TV and listening to the radio? I think it's really damaging. What's your thoughts on it?
I do agree. I think you can take what you want from it. I do think it's got better. I think as the world, if you like, has embraced the issue we have, which is mental health issues, they've realised that they can't clickbait everyone. They can't use emotional manipulation in the news to grab people's attention and to create this stir. They've realised they need to slow that down a little bit now. So I actually listened to the news yesterday, and I do think it has got a little bit better. What was interesting, what they were talking about, which ties into social media, Andrew Tate's now been exposed. His war room that he had online, the BBC went in there undercover, and he is teaching young boys or men how to groom women and to get them into the sex industry. That is what he is teaching them in those rooms. Emotional manipulation, mental manipulation. And that's now going to be getting shut down. So the news for that kind of thing, I think, is really, really powerful because, again, the language they use was he's targeting vulnerable young men, which is exactly what he's doing. And I think when people hear it in that context, rather than he's my hero, he's my idol, look what he's got, he drives a Bugatti, he's successful. No. Look at yourself. Why do you find that appealing? What are you missing in your life that makes you think that's what I want and need? And then you're going down that avenue, because the truth is you've got a lot of things you need to work on yourself before you can look up to someone like that, which I don't think he's an idol to look up to personally. Yeah. So I think with the news, it's language they use. When they use the correct language and when they put it in more factual rather than scaremongering, then it's beneficial. But again, when you're dealing with people that are already frightened, they're already concerned, they're panicking over life, that's the last thing they need to be seeing or viewing, you know?
Well, that's the problem with like an abundance of information. There's the good side of it where, like we spoke about, curiosity, questioning things, you know, making up your own choices and your own answers to something you may have heard or seen. On the flip side, almost too much stimulation of information for young people is, I suppose, it's like confusing, you know? I think people don't really know where they're going. And one of the questions that I'm always asked is, Aaron, I know I want to do more. I just don't know what to do because there's so many things out there in the world. So there's this stimulation of constant things that people think they should be doing. So there's two sides, you know, so they say double-edged sword kind of thing, good information and an overstimulation of it. How do you even navigate that? So how would you go about learning what you consume? What's real, what's not? Did we land on the moon? Did we not? You know, politics, corruption. Is there that balance? I mean, my personal opinion is you just don't consume it. Unless it's directly related to what you need to know or an industry. I believe you don't consume it. I think you are happier without mainstream media. But is there an alternative?
I don't disagree with what you say, but I think if someone has a growth mindset and they put the news on, because that's what I did yesterday, I just put it on for some background noise. And as I was listening to it, I'm always curious at what they're going to come out with. And like the Andrew Tate thing really caught me because I thought, we've been waiting for this exposure. You know, this has always been very obvious to me, the type of person he is. So the fact now he's been, in my opinion, fully exposed, you know, what his motives were, etc., that was really powerful. And I kind of thought, okay, if people can actually listen to this and take this on and be curious, okay, who is this guy? Actually look him up. Look at what he's been vilified for, shall we say. All these things and learn from that. Okay, is this the sort of guy I want to be? Chances are he's going to be in prison. Do you want to end up in prison? You know, so if you can have that growth mindset where you're curious about it and you learn from it and almost treat it like a business, you know, you've got to remember not everyone has that business mindset, which is a growth mindset. So when you actually open yourself up to learning about new things, then I think you can have a different perspective on it, you know, because whatever you Google, this is where people go wrong. Is the earth round? Put it in Google. Is the earth round? The first thing that will come up is yes. But then there might be other opinions on it. But because that's what you want to hear and what you believe, that's the first thing you hone in on.
Yeah.
So if you had that growth mindset, you could look through other things and go, actually, what's my opinion?
Yeah.
What kind of works in line with my values and my belief system? But people don't do that. They take the first thing and go, oh, yeah, that's got to be right. Yep, fine.
Yeah. It's like that whole effect of like, mum and dad said it. So I'll live by that.
But, you know, like, again, we are products of our childhood because that's who we learn from. So, yeah.
So when we look at the likes of TikTok and other social media platforms, we spoke about this before. One thing I'm really against is this blatant seeking viral views through negative stories with no positive outlook or a positive meaning behind it. Now, what I'm referring to, as you know, is bringing on, like, as a podcast host and someone who goes on podcasts, I believe it should be about value, information, and people should either be able to go, I agree or I disagree, but it not be too negative.
Yeah.
But we're not bringing on, but there are a lot of people now purely looking for the dopamine hit of viral views, and they're willing to bring on people who have horrific stories to tell with there's no like reform story where they've gone on to be an incredible person and they've helped hundreds of thousands of people. We're now just telling on social media gory, horrific stories. Where do we even go with that? Because the younger generation are seeing that. And I think of my son listening to a man talk about how he's mutilated a human being. I don't see where the benefit is. What's the answer to that? And is there even one?
This is where I think we need to start to, well, not we, social media companies need to actually start to look into stuff and take it more seriously. Sure, you can report videos and see if they get taken down, but they're missing the core components of this. So TikTok brought out something where, I had to send in all of my qualifications, show that I'm a licensed company here in the UK. Then they've accepted me as someone who's an authority in my field. Great. So in my mind, I've been verified. I think this is what they need to do with more people. So it kind of backs up because, I've got a code of ethics that I follow. So I'm not going to put anything out there that's going to potentially damage someone. I'm very mindful of what I put out there. Could I get more juicy stuff to go viral? Of course I could. But that's not going to serve a purpose. That's going to do more harm than good.
Yeah.
So I think that's where those kind of platforms need to kind of think about it. And it's interesting because I recently heard, I don't know if you're aware of this, but TikTok are now pushing longer form educational content as opposed to kind of like the dancing, what everyone jumps on, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So they're kind of trying to go down the YouTube route now, which again is more beneficial. Like that is going to be more beneficial to everyone as opposed to validation for likes, because what does that breed? That breeds levels of narcissism.
Yeah.
Like this is where everyone's getting driven into that corner right now.
Yeah. And I think it's short-term gains. Like I think if you're going for really cheap views by bringing on people who have got a nasty story to tell because it's going to get people's attention, my advice is stop immediately, because it is so short-term. I always think of this when I see other podcasters who are bringing on OnlyFans, criminals, all these some of the most awful stories. I always think Adidas would never work with you.
Yes.
Disney would never work with you. Doritos would never work with you. Like big corporate companies that would pay you a lot of money for a platform you're building are not going to pay you money for bringing on someone for that short term. And all it is it's for views.
Yes.
And I think that's a real shame, because we spoke about values the other day and working out kind of who you are as a person, what you're going to live by, progress, personal development, trying to be more positive. And I don't think a lot of people even know their values anymore.
They don't.
When we're seeing, especially on TikTok Live, people are fully grown adults and they're acting like children. It's bizarre. What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, you say children, I say narcissists. To me, all of that behaviour just screams narcissism to me. But the problem is it's celebrated. People see it and they think, oh, this is great. Like, oh, am I going to get picked? Like we were saying, people are now doing this thing where they're silent and they hold up a banner saying, until my type comes online, I'm not talking. So, now you're opening yourself up to being judged by a stranger to see if you're worthy of their time.
Yeah.
That's highly narcissistic. It's damaging for those who are vulnerable.
Yeah.
It's not healthy.
When you say it out loud, I mean, I say it out loud all the time, but when someone else says it, it's nuts. I mean, occasionally when I'm laying in bed, I will scroll on TikTok lives, and I said this, and it's not sexist and it's not, it's not biased because I'm a man, but 70% I would say are women sitting there, typically with cleavage, lingerie, sitting there on a bed, not saying too much, doing makeup, not even engaging with followers other than, guys, double tap the screen, thanks for the gifts, love you all, blah, blah, blah. And they're losing themselves because they're living in a false reality. And when they hit that off button, it's like a false high. And then when you go into the real world, oh, not everyone's telling me I'm beautiful all the time. Yeah. They're living in cuckoo land. And I think I think it's only going to get worse. And it's weird because we're becoming the minority. Like this isn't, we're in the minority. So I don't know, awareness, I suppose, is the only thing that we can bring. But my God, is this going to have like damaging effects on their mental well-being, right? Anxiety.
It's already happening. Like, this is already happening. This is the generation we're moving into. And, this is why I talk so much about it. And this is why I pull up influencers online who are promoting narcissism, who are promoting toxic behaviours. We still have wants and needs as humans, which is connection. You can't connect with someone when you're behaving in ways that's creating toxic environments. It's impossible. And then what happens? You damage people. Then what happens? We get more of a divide. All women are scum. All men are assholes.
Yeah.
That's not the truth. But because you're seeing so much of it and it's being so heavily promoted, and you go out on a date with someone and they behave like, what's the tips that are being given online? They're like, well, yeah, this is the generation we live in. This is what people are like. And it's not true.
Yeah.
But until people wake up and go, I don't want someone to be obsessed with me. I want a partnership. And I'm not going to follow these obsession tips. All these things, like obsession itself is a toxic behavior.
Yeah.
So when I see influencers promoting how to make a man obsessed with you, I'm like, well, hang on. It's no wonder this woman's never had a healthy relationship in her life. And she can't, you look at her page, it's quite transparent. She claims to have had toxic relationships because she's the common denominator. And that's what people need to look at and witness, as opposed to, oh, this is funny. Ha, ha, ha.
Yeah.
It's not funny.
We spoke about this. One bit of advice I would say, people need to take more ownership and they need to be more accountable for where you are in life.
100%.
No one else is to fucking blame. If you're not where you want to be, it's your fault. No one else's. But that's the problem. It's everyone else's fault. Oh, it's the economy. It's this. It's her. It's him. I need more money. I should have been better. I deserve this. I need a high profile man. I need a woman, size 8 figure, yada, yada, yada. It's always something else. And I really feel that it's becoming worse increasingly fast, and it's becoming the norm. And just staying on the TikTok lives, this whole I'm not talking until my type comes on, or I'm not talking until I get gifts, or shoulder pressing weights, and I'll lift the 20 if you send me a flying corgi. It's nuts. And they're doing it for hours.
Yeah.
Now, I just want to say this little sketch. I do a lot of sketches. Imagine if you meet someone who is on TikTok and you've got no idea, they're going to have this perception or this expectation that they're going to be complimented all the time. It's like you're bringing the false world into reality, which then the question is, do relationships really survive? Like, if we were to look at the next 5-10 years, what do you think relationships will look like? I don't think they look like what they did in the 50s.
No, I agree with you. We are coming into a very interesting age in terms of relationships. And I'm going to use the word situationships because that's what I'm hearing a lot of that's being promoted by influencers. Oh, I was in a situationship. So you've given it that title, which means that's how you was treating it. Relationships take work. But again, when we talk about values, no one knows their values. Well, how can you tell if you're compatible with someone if you have no idea that they have the same value as you? An easy one would be family. I don't value family. I don't want kids. But if I meet a guy that's got kids and he's heavily involved in his family, I know he values family, which means me and him, we're not going to be a good match because that's not my life. So things like that, and people being realistic rather than a woman going, that's all right. I'll be able to manipulate him to spend less time with his family. I'll be able to get him obsessed with me so he doesn't spend as much time with his child. I will be able to do that because I want him. Like, that's the mentality rather than being realistic and saying, do you know what? They're just not for me. And people don't want to communicate. There's nothing wrong with having a date with someone and saying, do you know what? I had a great time, but I just don't feel that we're compatible. And being respectful, there's nothing wrong with that. It's very healthy, but very few do it.
Yeah.
And that's half the problem. They just ghost them or block them. And then people think, well, what have I done wrong? And it's not that they've done anything wrong. You're just not compatible.
Yeah. I think also a loss of purpose. So when I look at TikTok Live and I see men and women desperate for gifts and desperate for this attention, I don't see an adult. Like, I'm totally baffled. Like, genuinely, I'm totally baffled about what is going almost through their thought process, and I can only guess they must have personal issues in their life. They must have, because I would never do that in a million years. You're never going to catch me up at 11 at night asking for a flying corgi.
Yeah.
I'm not, I'm knackered.
Yeah.
I'm tired.
Yeah. You have a life, you have a purpose, and you live to that standard. These people don't. They have mental health issues. They probably have a superiority complex. That's how they get their kicks.
Yeah. I'll tell you what's your thoughts? I talk about this a lot. On TikTok, people change their language. So me and you right now, we're just talking English. I spoke like this when I came out the womb. I just talk normal voice, normal accent. But as soon as you're on live, it's like big up. Literally, live. Rebecca, thanks for sending the fingers to me. Where does that come from? I mean, that's a personality disorder or bipolar, surely. Like, people have got issues, no?
Again, it's someone that lacks self-identity. Because look, so here's another spin I could put on that. So when I've met people in the past that have come to me for therapy, let's say they have a lisp or they have a stutter, they will change their voice so they're never judged on who they truly are because they've been bullied. And I get that. So you could argue it's a mask. It's a mask so they're not vulnerable and they're not showing who they truly are. That way they're never going to get judged.
Yeah.
So they put on an accent or they put on a voice, and that, I say, it works for them. There's potential for it to be that reason.
Well, I can say this about your content, and there's other people that I know that are great content creators. I've always been, we spoke about this, being authentic. I said this to Mac on the way up. So we got, just for anyone that doesn't know, we got Mackie Poo behind the camera. We've got the lovely Faye. But I said, I think it was last September, Faye, do you remember the podcast? I said, I truly believe the biggest movement on TikTok, if you want to grow and position yourself well and earn a lot of money, is be transparent and be authentic and just be you. And if you look at my videos 6 months ago, I've got the same voice, the same attitude, the same opinions as I do today. I'm not trying to pretend to be anyone else because that's not me. But I've noticed some content creators, I don't know if you've noticed this, and I said this on the way up to Mac, there's certain content creators that I used to love their stuff. I don't even recognise them now. Yeah. And they're trying to be, I can see the content creators they're trying to be.
Yes.
And I think, fail.
But again, so that comes down to your values. Like, you're someone that is authentic. You appreciate authenticity. And I think people are so used to seeing fakes. And like you say, people that are, I'm going to call them chameleons. You never quite know who they are. But when someone's consistent over time, they realise, holy shit, there's someone in this world that is actually authentic. They show up as who they are every single time, and they respect you for that. And that's the way I like to live with my content. I want people to know that is who I am. There's no changes coming up. That's how it is.
Yeah.
So
it's when you press that off button. I talk about this a lot. I think if you're in the world of social media, and we all are, I think if you're watching this and you want to build a business, social media will be a part of your life.
Yes.
I think we can agree on that. It's your window shop. It's your branding. It's how you market. It's how you tell people who you are and what you do and why they should work with you. So there has to be an element of it. I think you need to learn to be disconnected. When I press that off button, I'm off.
Yeah.
I am me.
Yeah.
I can feel things around me. I'm not waiting. And I think, fuck, I need someone to tell me I'm amazing. Not that they ever have either. But the point is I can hit off and stay off. Can you do the same?
Yeah. And I had a meeting yesterday with a new client who I've just took on, and I was talking through, tips on how to deal with all of that, because the addiction we get to the sound of our phone letting us know someone's commented or someone's liked or whatever it is. You look at my phone, there is no notifications on anything other than my business WhatsApp for my clients. That's it. So if you ever want to get hold of me, you've got to phone me or message me on that. Otherwise, it's when I look at my phone, which is often once a day, because I'm not interested. My phone goes on airplane mode every single evening. When I'm on calls working, it's on airplane mode. It doesn't bother me. And when you can get to that point where you take control over those things, it completely changes your mindset moving forward. Like, that's one of the first little tips. If you can do that, you're on a roll. And yeah, to start with, you're likely to look at the phone every hour, every half hour probably, to check to see if anyone's messaged or, likes, whatever. But over time, that will diminish because you're not used to hearing that sound, which is triggering you to become addicted to the dopamine hit you're getting from every time you see something on there.
Well, do you know, there's a key word that you said there. Everyone needs to take that word on board. Control. Good control.
Yeah.
Control of your finances, control of your life, control of your happiness, control of what you do. This is where I think a lot of people are going wrong. They're being led, they're being influenced, they're hearing something. I think we spoke about this before. I think we've mentioned it. There was a guy who stood on stage. So little story, stick around. This podcast was kindly sponsored by Sound and Vision Production Studios in Bromley. They are the one-stop shop studio for all of your content creation needs. That be long form or short form. They are empowering creativity through high quality audio and visual productions. So what are you waiting for? Step into the world of content creation, book a session with these guys. They know what they're doing and they'll be able to take you to the next level. Guy who stood on stage, really very intellectual, spoke very clearly, and said to the audience, this seminar he was at, did you know that having one Mars bar a week is more damaging than smoking 20, 30 fags a day? And the reason is, and then he went on to elaborate, and he said, because of this, he said, there is no tie to someone dying early or living till 90 and smoking fags. There's no correlation. But eating one Mars bar a week increases your chance of death. And the seminar was like, and you can see everyone, I'm not eating Mars bars, fucking hell, but I'm going to puff to the high heavens and back. Thank God this guy said it.
Yeah.
And he let everyone in the room consume it. And guess what? They all bought into it. And then he went,
course.
I was lying.
Yeah.
But you all bought into it, and guaranteed all of you would have gone away. You wouldn't have touched a Mars bar, but you'd all be smoking to the high heavens and back because I sold it to you. I said it clearly, and you all bought in. How many times does that happen? And then it makes you think about mainstream media. All these years. I don't even get onto the conversation about 9/11 or COVID or anything, or the moon landing with my mum. It don't go down well, so we don't talk about it. But so many people have bought in for years. BBC have said it. It must be true. Yeah. Like we were saying, you're not curious enough to go and find your own answers, right? Yeah. And a lot of people, and there's a lot of smart people on social media, isn't there?
Yeah, and you've got to remember, everyone wants to be accepted, right? It's a human need that we want to be accepted. We want to be part of a community. It's inherent within us. So for someone to then, let's go on to a Facebook thread, use that as an example, and they disagree. And they put their opinion in and they get absolutely hounded by hundreds, if not thousands of people. That could send that person to commit suicide. It's that serious for some people. So people now, it's easier to not say anything and then to question yourself based off of all the other stuff you see.
Yeah. And then you're not in your own thought process.
Precisely.
Which then attacks self-esteem, lack of confidence.
Yep.
Then you start doubting yourself.
Yep.
It has such a ripple effect, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Hence why we say you need the disconnect button. You need to switch off.
Yeah.
And I think that's a massive point, and something that's very, very big right now is this questioning who you are. I mean, I've never been around so many conversations where people are like, I just don't know where I'm going, I don't know what I'm doing. I think I fucking know exactly where I'm going. But then I'm in my own lane and I'm not, the whole judgment of, I know so many people that would love to start social media, but they are scared of the judgment, they're scared of the comparison. Trolls, you have it, I have it. It's water off a duck's back. And push comes to shove, honestly, it's just someone sitting at the end who's clearly going through quite a lot. That's the God's honest truth, right? But unfortunately, that stops a lot of people really pursuing something, Yeah. Ends up being a little bit regretful, which brings us on to a talking point of, there was Tim Grover on, and I love the quote, and it was off of the Diary of a CEO, where Tim Grover said, at some point, you've got to pay the bill of regret. Someone in your family has to step up because the world is the world's tough. Who's going to pay the bill? What's your thoughts on people sort of getting to a point in their life? Because, I launched the Breakout program, but I'm having people who are sort of 30 plus really now wanting to go, I want to change my life. I think I'm a little bit too late. What's your views on people getting to a stage of their life thinking, I haven't done enough. I need to do more.
I mean, that's fantastic. The fact you've recognised that, I think it's a real shame if someone beats themselves up for that. You know, we don't know when our time's going to come. That's the reality. Death is upon us all. That's the truth of it. So should you then use that as a motivator to, once you leave school, hammer and work like an absolute lunatic? No, because then you're missing out on life. Could you look back and say, you know, I could certainly look back and say in my 20s, I had a very comfortable life, but I didn't achieve that much. So could I now look back and go, I could have done more? Yeah, but I had a very comfortable life. So I think it's important you never regret anything, any decision you make, even if you didn't make that decision. Okay, what did you learn from it? Did someone else influence you? Why were they able to influence you? Learn from that. Don't let it happen again. You can always step up. And the great thing about social media, you know, like if someone found you online, your program's amazing for helping people transition into a new career or changing their lives. Fantastic for that. You're easy to find. They can check you out as much as they want, you know, and join up. They've got nothing to lose. But I think people are also frightened of taking that step because change is difficult. Commitment is difficult.
Yeah.
And it ripples through every aspect of your life, relationships, work relationships, you know, all of it.
Yeah.
If you're not committed, you're not going to make any changes at all.
Yeah.
So actually having the courage to go, do you know what, I'm going to take this.
I think
that's the first step.
What doesn't help, moving on to the platform Instagram is very visually pleasing.
Yes.
Looks great. And I think people who are slightly older, and the thing is we say slightly older, but you know, it's not even old, but that, you know, some people say, well, you know, I'm past it now or whatever. But they still have access to Instagram and it all looks very young, successful. So again, this sort of seed is sown that, well, I haven't done enough and I'm past it. I can't learn it. You know, I actually had a bonfire recently and a friend of mine came round and he might have to look for another job. And he was like, dude, I've got to be honest. I'm 40, I'm 45. I just don't know if my skills are transferable. I was like, mate, it doesn't matter. You just need to learn a new skill set.
Yeah.
Take an afternoon. You're still relevant. You're still current. We've got podcasters. I can't remember the guy's name now, but there's a guy, beard, very sort of masculine guy. He's an American. I like his stuff. He's just very to the point. He's mid-40s, whatever, maybe a little bit older, but he's smashing it. Joe Rogan. So they stayed relevant. And I was like, mate, you are not out the game. But the problem is you think you're out the game.
Everyone has value to bring, regardless of their age.
Yeah.
Something I did a couple of years ago, I approached some, I say they're kids, lads in their late teens, early 20s that have dominated Instagram, but they know what they're doing. And I contacted them to help me and they actually said, why have you come to us? I said, because you're young, you're current, you know what's going on in this niche. It's obvious. I don't. You know, to go to someone from my age range who's not really killing it like that, why would you do that?
Yeah.
You know, do I have more life experience than those guys? Absolutely. But in terms of Instagram and how to, you know, manipulate the platform, because that's what it is, they know what they're doing. They're top of their game.
Yeah. And you can learn it though. This is the thing. No one's out of the game. You know, if you want to change, you want something new, you want a new challenge. Again, going back to there's the good and the bad side of the abundance of information. That's the good side.
Yeah.
You know, you were talking about you changed, I don't know what it was. What was it you changed on your car? Drive shaft. I don't even know what that is. He changed one. Great. You know, he's still alive. You know, so it says a lot, but he learned off of YouTube. So every bit of information is out there. And I was trying to say that to my friend. I was like, dude, you're still in the game. You just got to learn something new. And actually, you've got a lot more to offer than what you think. But I think the problem is when you open up Instagram, you see that perfection. You know, you really do. And I've said it before. I think women see that, you know, and there's so many filters now, but like women will see that perfect beach body. Men will see, you know, the ripped body. But are they really living a happy life? Do we really know what's beyond them? Do we really know how they got their money? Do they really have money? You know, so there's so many, again, question it. Like I always say, take it with a pinch of salt. Because you would never really know what's true. But that's the problem with judgment, isn't it, in comparison?
Yeah, comparison is the thief of joy. It doesn't allow you to be present. It doesn't allow you to be fully within how you feel, the direction you want to go. It removes your ability to have success and be happy. For me, success is happiness. You know, something that I take all my clients through when I ask them, how do you define success? And they always go to the amount of money, the type of house, the type of car. And I'm like, okay, so explain to me, when you get that new car, how does it make you feel? They're like, oh, so happy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, then what? Does that mean you're successful? They're like, well, no. And it kind of fades. And then I look for something else. I'm like, okay, and then how does that make you feel? Oh, I'm happy. I'm like, oh, so you've reached your first, 10K month and you're happy? Yeah, I'm happy. Okay, so you've been successful and hit your target and you feel happy. Yeah. I'm like, okay, tell me what success means to you. They're like, it's happiness. Right.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter to what level you have materialistic things. It's about being present and going, do you know what? I'm proud of myself. Like with my book, I was so proud that I'd achieved that.
Yeah.
I had a little cry and a bottle of wine or two. And yeah. And yeah, I was very present with it. And I was like, I've been, you know, regardless of how the sales do, I've achieved something that I never thought I'd write a book.
Yeah.
But to me, that's successful.
Yeah. And do you know what? There's a big message in here, because we spoke about network recently, which I want, and you know, you've got a huge part in your book there about the egos. I think egos are damaging. You know, as a young lad, you know, Mac's gonna know this. You want to go gym, get big. You know, would you press?
Yeah.
Not a lot now. Not a lot. I ache. You know, WD-40 in my pocket all the time. But, you know, egos is quite damaging. Egos can stop you growing. And going into the conversation of your network is your net worth is totally true. It's made me a lot of money. It can make you a lot of money. It's now going to make you a lot of money after the conversation, you know, with some of your new connections that you're making now, which is awesome. And it's true. And if you don't have an ego, you can meet incredible people.
Yep.
And as we were saying, if you meet ambitious, successful, wealthy, well-connected people, they'll make a phone call for you. And all of a sudden you've got 10, 30, 40, 50 new doors open. And you're like, wow, that happened quick.
Yeah.
All just by being likable and not having an ego. And that's a part in your book there about talking about egos. And do you think that's, you know, that's where maybe some people are going wrong?
Yeah, like the whole taming toxic egos is we need to tame our egos. And when we go to toxicity, when we're talking about, like you said, on TikTok, all of these are toxic behaviors that are inflating people's egos. Narcissism is an overinflated ego. That's what it is. When someone's got a big ego, they're highly narcissistic. So what we're developing is big, massive egos that are creating toxic behaviors, and it needs addressing.
Yeah. And what about false people? So this is something that's very common. When I put out a video about managers who are quite negative, toxic, very point the finger, you know, the environment that people really don't like, and it typically stems from management, and that is then rolled downhill, and then the feeling amongst the workers on the shop floor or wherever it might be get that feeling of this is not a nice place to work. That feeling of sort of, you know, almost like breeding a toxic environment with no compassion and empathy. I find it so strange that that's all based around titles, how much someone earns. And I said to someone yesterday on a TikTok live, there's a guy who was asking a lot of questions, and I clicked on his profile and he had one follower. And I said, Mike, and my son was talking to him on the drive. I said, Mike, I am no different to you. Literally I'm a human. But it's so funny how people will separate themselves so much based on what they earn and what their title is.
And that's an inflated ego.
Yeah. Can you convert those people? Do those people really change, or do they just love it?
Yeah, so like what I talk a lot about in my book, and this is from my studies, this isn't clinical studies, but narcissism is developed. We all have narcissistic traits and tendencies. You can even have healthy levels of narcissism. And I believe it transitions and it can get to the clinical end, which is your personality disorder. So your example that you've just given, how I tend to see, we've got two levels. We've got healthy, level 1, level 2. So level 1 is where someone perhaps gets promoted at work. And, you know, Sally seems to be doing really well at work and she's managing all these people, but she's become a bit of a dick and you're like, God, Sally's a dick. No, Sally's becoming narcissistic. That's what's happening now. She feels superior to everyone else, and she's showing her authority, and she expects a level of respect. So that's your first level. Now, if someone could get to Sally and say, Sally, come on, look at what you're doing, explain it. And she goes, yeah, you're right. I've let this get to my head a little bit. She can actually regress those traits and transition and move it back into a healthy level of narcissism. But if they can't get into her, what then happens is it then transitions further where it becomes more clinical. So no empathy at all, no compassion. There actually becomes more of a drive to hurt people, and they get pleasure from that. Then when it gets to the clinical end, it becomes more fixed. So these toxic traits become very rigid. So I believe narcissism can progress, and you can also inflate it as well. But it's recognizing and actually having someone be able to have that conversation and say, look, what you're doing here is not great. We need to make some changes here. And if that person genuinely has a level of empathy, they will get it, because people don't want to naturally hurt others.
Yeah.
You know, we're not naturally designed to do that. But someone that has no empathy, or they're starting to transition that way because they enjoy the power, they enjoy the control they have over others, this is when it just keeps progressing. And then you've got to say, okay, we need to distance ourselves from that person, or we need to sack them.
Yeah.
Quite frankly.
It's like the Nazi effect. That's what I call it. It's very.
I think that's a very good description.
It is. And it's breed it more and more until ultimate control.
Yes.
And then fear's instilled. So no one speaks out, no one challenges the seniors, and then it's everyone behaves and everyone performs as we ask them to. What I would say, bit of reassurance. Trigger warning, if you have a manager that is power hungry, tells you to suck eggs, I guarantee you they don't wear the pants at home. And within the four walls, they feel very powerful. But I find it amazing that you get managers who feel very powerful in the four walls. But I'm just saying this, read between the lines, do what you want with it. When they leave those four walls, I mean, surely it's fair game. That's what amazes me. I know some people I would not want to mess with, and they have jobs. But a manager won't know that. And I find it almost like they must be slightly delusional to approach someone, treat them in a certain way, point the finger, without knowing history of them. But even just having human respect. But there have been studies, or not studies, but there have been certainly case studies where there's been horrific things where someone's been pushed over the edge. And that all comes from not showing someone respect. And then as a result, something bad happens. So I always struggle with that one, thinking, where have you got the cheek and the nerve to not really know someone, not give them the decency or the respect, and then with no compassion, no empathy? And just to throw another one at you. So if a team is not performing, this is one that always got me. I was really confused by this one, is that if someone's not performing well, something's going on. It's obvious. They normally do really well. They're not performing at work. Why not ask them, have you got everything that you need? Have I trained you enough? Do you need more support? Would you like to talk to me about it? Can I help? Opposed to, right, Rebecca in the office, you're not performing. We're going to have to now monitor this. Actually, probably performance review because you're not hitting the standards. No questions have been asked. Are you all right? Do you need anything from us? It's backwards.
But then we're talking about as well, like if you look at Microsoft is the biggest growth mindset company in the world. And they're one of the most successful because they don't just say we're a growth mindset company. They train all of their employees to have that mindset. So if you have a company that has, because what you've just described is a fixed mindset, you're not working out, I'm not interested. But the reality of the situation is like what you said, we're all human. We all have problems. We're all emotional creatures. So if something's happening at home and we take it into work, we can't help that. But if we get a bit of support in the work environment, it can make the biggest difference. But you need to work for a company that has a growth mindset structure in place to support you through that.
Yeah. Do you know what's funny as well is I have people say to me, well, Aaron, you talk about all the negative people in the workplace. Last one in, first one out. Is that how you'd want your employees to do it to you or treat you? Well, firstly, there's some things that I would change. In the workplace, I would not call employees employees. Team members. I would not title anyone a manager. It'd be leader.
Yes.
Or front man, front woman, someone who's leading.
Yeah.
And it would be utter respect for everyone. Cleaner, owner, no difference. Both of them bleed the same. The pay packet's different. Why is the communication, why is the levels of respect any different?
Yeah.
And to throw a bit of fun into it. You know, people perform really well when they're having fun.
Yeah.
Matt can't stop laughing right now. Faye's in hysterics. Well, a little laugh there. But no, the point is, bit of banter, a bit of humour, compassion and empathy always perform so much better than cracking the whip.
I do agree with you. I do agree with you.
Baffles me.
But, you know, some companies, you've got to remember, they've got themselves stuck a little bit because they have a team of very narcissistic, toxic managers. To actually sack all of those and strip the whole structure could be very costly. And I don't think they've got the confidence to do that because, you know, that's the reality situation. You will have a team of narcissistic employees that crack the whip for everyone else. You know, you've got to put structures in place so it doesn't get to that point or that level. And if it has, you've got to be confident enough to say, okay, we're going to be doing reviews. We're going to put changes in, you know?
Well, I have a very interesting question for you. One that comes up a lot, and I know we spoke about this before, but not on a podcast. This comes up a lot. And what is your answer to this? The words, obviously, toxic and narcissist are used a lot across a lot of content creators. I think the word is becoming more frontal now. It's being used a lot more. When someone calls someone else a narcissist, who's the narcissist? Because that's like an argument. Well, you're a narcissist because you're calling me a narcissist. But they'll never admit they're the narcissist, but they're calling someone else a narcissist. Yeah. Who's the narcissist? The one who says it or the one who's receiving it? Or perhaps is it both? Is there a right or wrong answer?
There isn't a right or wrong answer because, you know, narcissists use something called deflection. So if I was a narcissist, you said, you know, Rebecca, you're nothing but a narcissist. I would deflect that by saying, well, hang on a minute, Aaron. You're the one that acts in a very grandiose, superior manner. So in fact, you're the narcissist. So I'm deflecting it. And that make you think, oh, I wonder what I've done. You know, what am I doing that's made her say that? So it just takes the heat off the narcissist. But equally, you might have someone who isn't narcissistic, but they've heard the word and they don't feel safe around someone and they think maybe they are. So they just throw it out there just to see if, you know, they're right. Because that person might go, oh, okay, yes, I am, you're right. I mean, it's highly unlikely.
Yeah.
But, you know, like victims want validation. They want to be right, as in, I was treated badly. This person is a bad person. They are a narcissist. They want that validation. So I think a lot of victims also use that language to try and get validation, but it doesn't work.
So deflection and pivoting away from it. So essentially, every MP that we have in the UK is a narcissist. Pretty much, right? Oh, Rishi, you're a narcissist. Maybe we'll take that out because I don't want to get cancelled on TikTok.
Yeah, let's not.
No, we're leaving that in there. Just as we come to an end, sort of tell us about the book, you know, Taming Narcissism, Toxic Nonsense Egos. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you say it.
So the book, Taming Toxic Egos, Narcissism Nonsense.
I said all of it. I'm giving full context.
It's basically your handbook for the toxic world that we live in. So, you know, narcissists come in all shapes and sizes. People want to know more about narcissism. And what I've found is you've either got very clinical books that the average person reads and has no idea what's going on because the language is so clinical, or you have books that are full of stories, which, okay, you can relate to stories and they have a degree of helpfulness, but you don't understand quite what's going on. So what I've done with this book is I've covered all aspects in terms of narcissistic family dynamics, narcissism in the workplace, how to handle a narcissistic friend or a friend that has a big ego. So I've worded it slightly different. I've also given the subtypes of narcissism so people can really understand every aspect of narcissism and the levels it comes in. And then there's little stories, which are true stories. I've changed the names to cover people's identities, but they are true stories. So the idea is I give a bit of context and then I give a story so you can tie it in and actually see exactly what gaslighting is, exactly how it affects someone and how it's put into play. So that's how I've written that book. And then at the end, I've given the antidote, which is increasing your emotional intelligence, learning values and developing boundaries. So it really encompasses everything in terms of narcissism, how to protect yourself, how to heal from it, how to recognize them. All aspects are covered on it.
A bit more self-awareness.
Yeah, and I've made it easy for the average person to read because I want people to be able to understand it and not get caught up in all the language.
Well, I've done obviously the values of it at the end, and sort of like it's almost like a self-assessment, isn't it, to become a little bit more aware of, you know, being aligned with what you want and who you are and what you can marry that up to in terms of value. So the links for your book will be in the description, so do go check that out. And it is, you know, I think it's one of those things, again, that's the good side of information, isn't it? You know, find out a little bit more about you and actually who you want to be and who you are. So that's awesome. Rebecca, second time round, thank you so much for coming on. I'm sure we're going to do a part 3. And I would say shout out your socials, but everyone knows who you are now. Second time round, it'll be in the link. So everyone, thanks so much, and we will see you all very soon.
Thanks, Aaron.